Right, let's pick up this conversation and hopefully we can get our guest in Pretoria now to just talk to us this morning. Ottilia, let's try again. Ottilia, are you able to hear us? Institute of Security Studies.
Yes, I am able to hear you now.
Better. Good. We're so glad. Let's quickly get into some of the points that we've got here. Museveni's comments are contradictory to the reaction from many leaders about Trump's derogatory comments. And I'm talking about the fact that he kind of likes Trump and thinks that Trump is talking the truth, even about Africa. What do you make of that?
I found it quite interesting that the president of Uganda would come out with a statement really supporting Trump on this, because I think what has come out from here in South Africa, Botswana, Nigeria, and even the African Union has actually been quite reflective of the concerns that Africans should have around the way in which the American president has been speaking. But I think for Uganda specifically, and for the president to make that statement without actually taking responsibility as a leader of Uganda for any of the things that he thinks are problems in Uganda is quite problematic.
Yeah, I mean, he made these comments in Kampala to the East African Legislative Assembly. They seem to laugh off what he said.
I suppose there's quite a lot in terms of laughing off serious concerns while not necessarily agreeing with them. And I think perhaps the one thing, and we have to be mindful of, is that Yoweri Museveni is one of the now longest serving presidents on the African continent, and there have been concerns in his own country, people protesting, looking at some unfair punishment and so forth. And I think, and I'll reiterate this point, that he would have to take responsibility for some of the things that he agrees with Trump for, while at the same time recognizing, obviously, that because there are some bad things in a country doesn't necessarily make it, and I won't use Trump's word on Morning Live, but it doesn't necessarily make Africa or specific countries as horrible as Trump and perhaps even Yoweri Museveni would want us to believe.
Yeah, indeed. I think we're one of the only broadcasters who are not saying the full word. I notice most international broadcasters were not shying away from it, showing the extent of how upset people actually were when they heard these words. This is quite an interesting comment that he also said. I'm going to quote this. He said, "In the world, you cannot survive if you are weak, and it is the fault of Africans if they are weak," unquote. Very interesting words there. What is he saying?
Well, I suppose the statement, and I hope I'm interpreting it correctly here, is looking at obviously the geopolitical weakness of the African continent, particularly at an international stage. I think it's no secret, for example, that countries like the United States do wield a lot more power, particularly military as well as political and economic power. That being said, I think it's disingenuous to, especially coming from an African leader, to make such a statement without recognizing where this comes from, and particularly the history that the African continent does have. And it's also a little bit disingenuous to make that statement and not back it up with what he as a leader has done to elevate Africa's power, elevate Uganda's power. It's almost as if he's saying, well, if there are any weaknesses in my country, don't blame it on me, blame it on the fact that it's in Africa, which I think is completely incorrect.
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there. We were hoping to talk about Eritrea, but unfortunately the time has just run away with us. But thank you so much for talking to us. I know we'll have you back, and we thank you for your generous time in talking to us. Ottilia is from the Institute of Security Studies. Quick break.